Hello you lovely lot and welcome to a brand new video. My name is Katie and we're going to take a look at the April UpCrate. If you didn't know, UpCrate is a monthly subscription box and it's been going for quite some time now, and I bring this up because they've featured the original artist from the very first box. I'm not sure if it's pronounced Cludvig or Cludwig, but it's the same artist and it's really nice to see and have another print by them. As you'll see, I had the original one from the very first box all that time ago. Anyway, let's talk about the supplies whilst I very quickly go through the magazine. As you quickly saw, we have a small array of pens and a lovely little tin of watercolours. Unfortunately, I don't have any pigment information whatsoever or colour names for these watercolour paints. I did reach out to UpCrate, but they have yet to get back to me, so we'll just have to roll with it, won't we? Anyway, let's talk about the pens. So we had one of the Spectrum Noir metallic liners, marker pens in there, and that is in the colour Garnet. We also have some of the ArtSpace alcohol markers in a violet, pastel yellow and pastel rose. They have a brush tip and a chisel tip there. Also featured is a Tombow Fudenos, I can't pronounce it, but it's the twin tipped one. It's got grey at one end, black at the other, and it's a very nice selection of liner pens all in one vessel. Also in the box we have the tiniest brush ever. It is a Lineo size 0, which is just great for watercolours, isn't it? For colouring large areas and swooshing the colours around. No, it's not. And why did they put such a tiny brush in there? Why? The paper we have is the Saunders Waterford Hot Pressed 300 GSM High White 100% cotton watercolour paper. And it's really nice. We have 3 sheets of that, and oh boy, I wish we had more. I love this paper. Please put more of this paper in there, UpCrate. But anyway, I'm kind of in danger of waffling a little bit there, so let's talk about the prompt. This month's, or last month's, topic is thinking about the future. I'll be honest, I try not to think about the future all that much. Kind of low-key gives me a bit of anxiety, so yeah, it was a bit of a tricky one. I suppose I could have done something really space age, but that just seems very turn of the millennium, so I didn't go for that one, and I went for a slight fortune teller theme here. Now, the character in the background is not the fortune teller. In fact, they are rejecting having their fortune told because they don't want to know, because it makes them anxious. That's kind of what I went with here. I started out by penciling all this in off screen like I usually do, and then I added the outlines over the top afterwards using the grey end of that dual pen. And I'll be honest, that's a pretty nice pen we've got there, and I'm already feeling sad for when it inevitably dies because I will absolutely use it to death. I began by adding some base colours in there, and those markers seemed like a good idea. They're quite interesting to use alongside watercolours. It's not really something I do very often, so it was nice to have a little bit of a play about. Because it is a alcohol based ink there, what happens is it doesn't mush the paper up all that much. It might do a little bit because of the friction of the tip onto the paper, but as for the ink or the liquid itself sitting on there, it doesn't really degrade the paper all that much, so when it comes to adding the watercolour over the top, it should still behave relatively the same as if there was no ink there to begin with, in theory. I actually thought this was quite a nice touch of UpCrate to do that and actually combine those two mediums together. It's not something I see a huge amount of, and like I mentioned, it's not something I do very often. I tend to use alcohol markers alongside colour pencils if that's the route I'm going to take. Part of me slightly regrets using that yellow on the crystal ball there, which is emitting some light. I wish I'd perhaps just not bothered and used the yellow watercolours, but hey, you know what, you live and you learn, and oh, if only I had foresaw that happening. No pun intended. Anyway, At this point, whilst the alcohol inks were just settling down, I added a few stars, twinkly bits around the edge just to make it look a little bit more mystical, and also decided to add some more of that yellow glow. Since as we had one colour left that I hadn't used, I thought that pastel rose colour would work a treat. And it's a bit weird really, the yellow and the pink, they're not very pastel-y at all, are they? I'd say maybe they were a vibrant, but hey, that's just my opinion. But I do like how nice and flat these went down though, and again, like I mentioned earlier, it just makes a really nice base to work over the top with those watercolours. Now, speaking of which, let's get in there. So there was a violet in there, and I'm going to assume it might be a dioxazine violet. Forgive me if I've said that wrong. It just reminds me a little bit of that Quar version I got and probably should feature again at some point. However, you'll see on screen now how it worked quite nicely over the top of those alcohol markers. That layer of ink that I'd put down beforehand really just gives everything a bit of a nice luminous boost there. Of course, true to form though, I will inevitably end up overworking it, and that lovely luminous colour will eventually get lost because, I don't know, I just wanted to play about. Obviously we have a black there, and I can assume a ultramarine blue, but who can tell? I actually think this month's box has been brilliant. And there's only two things that have let it down this time. The first one is that ridiculously small brush, which I've just rejected and used one of the ones I got from Grabby a little while back. And the fact that there are no colour names on these watercolours. That would have been so helpful, and wouldn't have that been perfect if you'd not used watercolours before? These could have been your first ever set, and you don't know what the colours are, so when you go beyond the box, so to speak, and go onto your own project, or maybe you're looking at other artists and they might say use a specific colour, you're not going to be sure if you've got that or not. And I just think that's a little touch that has just ever so slightly let this box down. But it's not the end of the world though. I still think actually this is a pretty awesome box, especially compared to last month's, which I did not enjoy one bit. I have no idea what blue I'm using around the edge here. It's definitely not that ultramarine-y one, so yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I don't think it's a cobalt. It's a little bit too dark and a little bit too transparent. So yeah, I just work with it. I introduced that violet colour on the transition between the blue and the yellow, just so it doesn't come out green, because I tend to find, especially when you're doing like a galaxy or something and you want to add some yellow tones in there for the stars, but you've obviously got a very deep blue background, you can sometimes end up with a bit of a green tinge, which is fine if you want it, but if you want a nice smooth transition between the colours there, purple is your friend. I thought now would be a good time to add a little bit of depth and detail, so whatever red they'd put in there, I went over the top of that light pink colour and introduced a little bit of the black in there just to bring it down and add some tonal variations in there, but I still kept it relatively smooth. I also begin to introduce a very light skin tone in there, and again that's just with whatever colours I could find. They were looking a little bit orangey, but with a bit of dilution that did remedy it somewhat, so I was okay with that. And I just added a little bit of whatever that red was. It might be a cadmium, but who knows. But I added that in there just to add a little bit of blush, a little bit of texture, you know, the good stuff I usually do on a portrait-y illustration kind of drawing here. I'm really waffling, aren't I? So I was really happy to see that they had brought back their first ever featured artist. I actually do think that's quite a nice touch, and I think it might be either end of August or September. It'll be 4 years since UpCrate came out, and I remember supporting them on Kickstarter, and I saw all these wild ideas being posted all over Instagram about a new art subscription box, and I remember supporting it, and it was great. And not to blow my own trumpet here, but I'm going to anyway, I actually won the competition for the first ever box, and yeah, I've got happy memories. I know there have been some really stinky UpCrate boxes over the past 12 to 18 months, but I'm still I still don't regret supporting them on Kickstarter, and I do genuinely hope that things do start to take a more consistent direction upwards, rather than these peaks and troughs that they have where they just chuck any old random stuff in a box and call it a project. Or that could be me not having much imagination, I guess, with the supplies, but still, some of them do not make sense in my opinion. Yeesh, that got a bit intense. Let's go back to the picture, shall we? So I was beginning to think that those grey lines that I'd added were beginning to vanish, and as you saw, I overdid it in the background, so that luminous colour in the background's gone now. However, it did throw things off balance a little, so using the black tip on that dual marker or dual liner worked a treat. I didn't overdo it, I kept some of the lines as grey, but the majority of them I went over again. And if you're a bit of a long time viewer here, you do know I like to go over things more than once. I don't know why. I think I just like to punish myself with it sometimes. I was actually quite surprised though by how well this pen performed over the watercolour. For me personally, unless I absolutely have to, and I tend not to really do liner based work with watercolours, it's not very often I will, but I do tend to find when it comes to going over watercolours, it can sort of clog the nib up a little bit, even though this is a slight brush one. Sometimes the particles of watercolour paint get lodged into the fibres and then it's never quite the same afterwards, but I actually found that this wasn't particularly an issue on here, so that's either really good watercolours we've got there, really nice transparent ones, or it's a really good pen, who knows. Of course, this wouldn't be one of my drawings with a character with hair without me adding some hair details in there, so I didn't go to town too much on it, but I obviously went there. For the table, I thought that purple colour would be ideal, and I just build all the colours up, and I just keep doing that. And I must admit, even though I don't know anything about these paints, they were actually quite nice to paint with. They activated really quickly, the colours were pretty consistent, and yeah, I was quite happy with it. I'd use these again, I probably will. They're a nice little travel size, so they might be coming away with me on my next vacation, who knows? I almost forgot we had a Spectrum Noir metallic marker pen in there too. It's not actually listed in the magazine, so I don't know if they had to make a change of plan really quickly. I don't know. It's kind of hard to find where that would fit in with this piece, so I just added a few little strands of colour here and there. Nothing over the top, but I can at least say that I used it. But with that being said, this picture is drawing to an end, and this video will also be drawing to an end very soon afterwards. In conclusion, I like this box. I wanted more paper, I wanted a thicker brush, and some pigment information, but overall I actually thought this was a pretty good box, and I hope you guys enjoyed your box if you got this one too, and have created some beautiful or wonderful things with it. I want to say a massive thank you as always for watching. I hope you've enjoyed watching and it's helped you if you've got a little bit stuck with this box and not sure what to do with it, or if you've just enjoyed painting along with me for whatever project you're doing at the moment. If you want to watch some more videos, I'll leave a playlist and one I think you'll enjoy on screen, so why not give one of those a click? Of course, if you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so you don't miss out on any more videos. And I'll see you lovely lots soon. Bye!